Hello and welcome to yesterday's airlines. The end of the year rapidly approaches and it is time to take a look at what is likely to be the last set of announcements from Phoenix in 2024. Because obviously, early in the new year, it's the Chinese New Year celebrations, factories close, everyone travels back to their homes and not a lot gets done. So I think this will probably be the last set of announcements from Phoenix, at least until January, maybe February. But it has been a pleasure to look at Phoenix models this year. They have been making some really interesting releases, great diversity and some good usage of their mold catalogue. A distinct difference to quite a few of the other brands who really have not been hitting the marks as well as Phoenix have been. And when I look at what I bought for Phoenix this year, I have got 16 of their models now, which is a large number considering the last time I got that many models was 2013. So it really illustrates, I think, how well Phoenix have been doing in producing an interesting range of models this year. Because a few years ago I was getting one or two of their releases a year, and now I got 12 last year and now up to 16 this year. That's really impressive. So Phoenix has been great. And I just received my Air Jamaica A340-300 from, I think it was probably the August announcements. That's an excellent looking model, really pleased with that. And I've seen some pictures of the upcoming Air Namibia 767, which is another one I've acquired. And again, looks great. So, excellent. And this month we've got another good and interesting and diverse set of models from Phoenix, 17 releases in total. So we'll be getting to rank those releases in a very short time. But before I do that, as always, please chuck a like on the video if you enjoy the content and subscribe to the channel if you like the sort of stuff I'm posting. I try to cover as much as I can in 400 scale, which is increasingly difficult because there's so much going on. I literally just reviewed the HX Model 747 at the website, so don't forget to check me out at my other channels. At Yesterday Airlines on Instagram and Facebook, and yesterdaysairlines.com, where that HX Model 747 review sits, because that is a really exciting release and the sort of exciting news that I like to try and bring to the site. But let's get on and check out Phoenix's announcements for November. So this month is quite a wide body heavy month from Phoenix, and that's not a bad thing because their wide body molds tend to be better than their narrow body molds. But we do start with a narrow body, and this one is an A320 Neo. It is in the colours of Royal Jordanian. It is registered JYRAA. And this is quite a nice scheme that Royal Jordanian have produced to put on their new Neos. I mean, they've been having this, I always think it looks green, but apparently it's not. That's just my bad eyesight. This colour has been Royal Jordanians now for 20, 30 years, but they modify the scheme and it always looks really smart. And this looks really nice on the A320 Neo as well. In fact, it almost got that kind of private jet look to it. Nobody else has announced this so far, though I would be surprised if it didn't get a release from someone else. Probably JC, I'd have thought. I have reservations about the Phoenix A320 mold. It is probably the weakest, but it's when in the Neo version, it's better than the JC one with the giant engines. It's not really hitting the spot mold-wise, but it is a good selection. I'm going to put this one up into Workhorse. Next, we've got another foray into the US market from Phoenix, and it's easy to forget how unusual that is for Phoenix. Historically, they've barely produced any United States airlines, but they've increasingly been moving into this space, and rightly so, I think. So that makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of good sales to be had in the States. Though, of course, whether that continues with 10% tariff extra added on, we'll see. This model is Hawaiian Airlines. It is registered N399HA, and it is the 18th Hawaiian A330 that has been made in 400 scale, but I have to say the majority of the releases up to this point have been Gemini releases on a mold which isn't as good as this one. The only real competition for this release is a 2020 NG Models release. So it's been a while since anyone's made a Hawaiian A330, and most of the releases haven't been on a mold which is as good as the Phoenix one. So I'm minded to put this one up into High Flyer. I think it's a solid, reliable choice from Phoenix, a good option in place of all the Gemini releases on the JC mold, which I don't think is as good. And yeah, should be nice. The third model this month is another brand new aircraft. It is in the colours of Kuwait Airways, an airline that's been getting a surprising amount of coverage recently in 400 scale. This one, 9K APJ, is an A330-900 Neo and the first of a pair of 900 Neos for Kuwait Airways. They already operate 4 A330-800s and they've been made by NG and JC and Phoenix, but this one is A330-900. The aircraft I don't think has been quite delivered yet, but it must be very close to being delivered, and Phoenix are the first company to announce it. I wouldn't be surprised again to see this from other brands, JC and NG, but not so far. The Phoenix A330-900, I haven't had a chance to look at it recently, but I know they have modified it to make it better, especially the wingtips. I think it's a decent mould, and perhaps not quite as strong as the CEO they've got, but it's fine, and I'm minded to put this one up into High Flyer as well. Now, one of the things that I've really liked about Phoenix this year is their A340s. They've got a really good A340 mould, and there's a lot of good coverage. There are a lot of old Dragon and old Gemini releases from 10, 20 years ago, and there hasn't been a lot of A340 coverage since then. This year they've made a really good range of them, and I've picked up quite a few: Kuwait, Air Lanka, Air Mauritius, Egypt Air, Air Jamaica, as I just said. And this one is another great choice. It is in the colours of British West Indian Airlines, or Airways, sorry, BWIA, wearing the steel drum scheme. And this has been made before, as I say. It's been made by Gemini in 2003 and Dragon in 2006, but those are so old and so obsolete that it will be delightful to see this aircraft in 400 scale on an updated mould. The reg of the aircraft is 9YT Juliet November, so that's the same reg that Gemini produced, but as I say, doesn't matter. That Gemini released 21 years old and obsolete. This one will be spectacular, I think. Really looking forward to this one. Another one which I'm definitely going to get, and I'm going to put this one up in the Supersonic. And that brings us on to the Boeings, and a decent selection here as well. We start with a bit of a surprise, a Boeing 717 in the colours of QantasLink. It's VH Yankee Quebec Sierra, the last flight 717. I believe that Phoenix are making this because it was requested by a retailer in Australia. Now, the Phoenix 717 hasn't been seen for a long time, and it isn't the best mould in the universe. It's certainly not as good as the current JC Wings Gemini offering. It's got a very long seam on it. It's got quite old-fashioned looking gear. I'm not sure how much Phoenix are going to upgrade this just for this release. I imagine they'll put on aerials, and the printing will be better, presumably, in their old releases, but I don't think they're going to replace the gear, and it is still that old mould. So I've got an old QantasLink version from 2003, and to be honest, this one probably won't look dramatically different, except the livery of the airline has changed. That does temper the interest in this somewhat. There haven't been that many QantasLink 717s for a long time. Last one was in 2019 from Gemini, and that was nice because it's on the newer Gemini mould. This one, yeah, I'm not sure this one is really going to be that good. I think I'm just going to put this one into Workhorse. It will be interesting to see what it looks like. Don't expect too much is my suggestion. Next model is a 747. So you know I'm going to scrap metal this because I hate the Phoenix 747s. And it is interesting to see that HX models, as I said earlier in the video, have got their new 747 model on the market. I'm really impressed by it. And this aircraft, China Airlines B1886, is exactly the kind of release I would expect to see from HX, to be honest, in that Asian market. So even more reason to not care about this Phoenix version. Really interested to see what HX can do with their 747 upcoming. Really like the mould, really like the overall product, really nice stand. It's got a collector's card. They're not even that expensive, just currently a bit hard to get. So certainly another nail in the coffin of these Phoenix 747s. This one can be easily ignored. And moving on to another mould which is potentially approaching obsolescence, but a much better mould, is a series of 767-300s. So first up here we've got a couple of Landor British Airways Series 300 ERs. We've got just the Landor scheme, City of Paris, G Bravo November Whiskey Bravo. And then we've got similar scheme but with Fly New Club Europe titles for Bravo November Whiskey Victor. Phoenix did already make a Landor 767 in 2023. That one had World's Biggest Offer written on it. Turned out looking quite nice. I like Phoenix 767s. As I say, I'm getting the Air Namibia version that's coming up soon. But I have to have some caution because both NG models and Panda have got 767-300s that are coming soon or already kind of just here. And you got to say they are better than this Phoenix mold. So the question is, do you get these or do you wait? It's hard to know, and I think you have to take it on an airline by airline basis. I have to say these two will probably turn out very nicely, and some of the more shortcomings will be hidden by the blue belly. So I'm going to put these two up into high flyer, I think, but I am a little cautious about Phoenix 767s moving forward. And to illustrate that, the next two 767s in this release set have been announced apparently by C Models, and they'll no doubt be using the Panda Models mould. So we've got a couple of China Easterns, one of them in the standard China Eastern scheme, and that one is B2568, and the other one is in the China Eastern Yan'an colours with the feather, and that's B2569. So yeah, and this is exactly what I mean. I would almost certainly be aiming for the Panda C Models releases rather than these two. Not that these will be bad, they'll perfectly, they'll be nice. It's a good enough mould, but it's not a great mould, and it's a little old. And there is this feeling with Phoenix at the moment that they're kind of using up time or running out of road with several of these moulds. Obviously 747s are way obsolescent. You've got these 767s which are approaching obsolescence, and the same could be said for the A330s and A340s to a degree, certainly for the 777s and MD-11s and the 787. So you've got to look at the Phoenix's mould catalogue and you're going, these aren't really the strongest. If other brands were producing the same models, you would probably choose those, but they're not always doing that. I'm going to put these two China Eastern 760s into Workhorse. Okay, we're up to model number 11 for the month, and this one is a FedEx 777. It's wearing the Panda scheme with the Panda on the front, but it appears to be the new colours version of that without the express titling, with all white engines. And unlike the Gemini announced model, this one is wearing the proper new scheme with the all white engines, whereas the Gemini announced one from last month still had FedEx Express on the engines, if you believe the artwork anyway. So this is unique. No one else has made this new scheme so far in this variant. The reg is N893FD. Perfectly good mould. The Phoenix 777, probably not a world beater anymore, but it's perfectly competitive. And this one is going to get into high flyer. We've got one more 777 this month, and it's a Series 300 ER. This one, BKPO, is in the colours of Cathay. So this is the standard Cathay Pacific scheme. 2 months ago, I think, they announced what is the new Cathay scheme, basically the same as this, but with much bigger titles. This one is the previous version with the smaller titles. It's been made quite a few times before in 400 scale and by most brands. And to be honest, I'd argue that like the Aviation 400 version and the JC Wings versions were probably a bit better than Phoenix's. So yeah, this is fine. Again, it's solid, it's reliable, not going to win any awards, and yeah, it's kind of a workhorsey model. Now, The remaining bones this month are both 787s, and I talked previously about the fact that Phoenix has updated their 787 mould, and I reviewed that Qantas edition and it was fine. The mould is a lot more competitive than it used to be. Still not spectacularly good, and other 787s are better, but it's a good option still. And the first one of these this month is an especially good option. Another foray into the US market, and a release that nobody else, unbelievably, has made up to this point in time. It's a United Airlines 7878 N45905, wearing the current scheme. So really, really surprised that nobody has made this so far. Looking at what has been made, there have been quite a few United 7878s, but they're all wearing the Unicom scheme made by Gemini between 2012 and 2019. There's really been nothing that's been wearing this scheme, and even those old releases are using the old seamed mould, so they're incredibly obsolete. So there's actually a really, really good selection here from Phoenix, and I love the fact that Phoenix look around, check out what's been made, and pick interesting aircraft that have either been made only a long time ago on inferior molds or have never been made before, and this is what I'd like to see more from other brands. So I'm really applauding this release, even though the mold isn't necessarily the strongest. How the hell has nobody else made a United Airlines 7878 wearing the current livery? Maybe there haven't been many paid in up till recently, but it still is a bit of a surprise. And yeah, I think it's a great choice, and I think this is a great seller. So I'm going to put this one in supersonic, even though the mold is perhaps not a supersonic mold. The other 787 this month, a bit more pedestrian. Vietnam Airlines, Series 9, VN A870. Not a lot to say about this. There have been previous Vietnamese 787-9s from both Gemini and NG models. Not sure they necessarily got the colours right, but even so, this one's not necessarily doing much for me. I'm going to put this one into Workhorse. And that leaves us 3 models to discuss. 1 Russian, 2 Douglas. First one is the Ilyushin IL-96-300 RA96002. They are finding some really obscure liveries that even I haven't seen before, to be honest. This one is in the colours, I believe the airline was called Airstairs Airways. I'm not sure if it's still in these colours, because it's the sort of colours that don't really have titles or anything, so it's unclear. But I believe Airstairs was a cargo airline. They went out of business in 2011, and they only had this one 96-300. They had other aircraft, but just the 196. So it's an interesting scheme, pretty obscure, and maybe slightly plumbing the depth, but it's not a bad scheme. And if you're a collector of Russian aircraft, then this will probably be quite high. I think it's a little bit obscure for my Russian collection, but nonetheless, hard not to like an IL-96 release, and this one gets up into high flyer, no probs. Last 2 models of the month are both McDonnell Douglas MD-11s. And the MD-11 mold Phoenix, even though it's been modified even, that is, recently with a lower nose gear, it's still a really old mold. I reviewed the Delta one, it did okay, but it's not great. You've got new versions coming from Panda models and HX models. They're going to be better, aren't they? And so, again, much like with the 767, be careful. But the first one of these mass cargo, on lease from World Airways, N275 Whiskey Alpha, I think is the sort of model which is unlikely to get released by anyone else anytime soon, so makes sense for Phoenix to produce it, and if you're going to buy it, I wouldn't be hanging out there waiting for someone else. I'd probably just get this version. It's nice enough. It doesn't thrill me. I'm not that interested in Malaysian cargo MD-11s, but I'll put this one up in high flyer. I think it's decent enough. The next one is a model which has been crying out to be made because there haven't been any good Delta MD-11s wearing the Ron Allen scheme. But question whether this is the one to buy. N802DE is the registration. I think I will wait myself until Panda make this. I just think their MD-11 is so much better. I'm going to be so much better that it probably is nearing the end of my collecting Phoenix MD-11s. So for me, I think I'm willing to wait. It's going to be a fine model, but it's not going to be spectacular. The mold's limitations, because of its age, are reasonably well known. I'm just going to put this one into Workhorse, I think. So there we have it. It's been a really good year for Phoenix, and this is another good, solid, reliable set with some really classy models in it. Interesting choices that haven't been made before, interesting choices that have been made a long time ago on inferior molds. But as I said, I am concerned that some of these Phoenix molds are kind of running out of road. New competition is coming up, which is going to be better. So that is a minor concern. But overall, looking at this set, some great models. I'll definitely get that BWI A340. That's possibly the only one for me this month. But plenty of other interesting models in here in terms of the Landor 767s, FedEx 777, that United 787, and so on. There's always this year been something of interest in these Phoenix sets, pretty much for everyone. It's been a really good year for Phoenix, so very pleased with them. And I think, to be honest, they've probably been the most interesting brand this year, even though I don't necessarily buy that many of their models. I think their release sets are diverse and interesting. So bravo to them, and I think that rounds up the year for Phoenix. Thanks very much for watching, everyone. Hope you've enjoyed the video. As always, stay tuned for more. JC Wings have announced their December releases, and so I'll be doing a video on those soon, and I think NG had just put some hints out as well. So keep an eye out for more videos. But that's it from me for now. Goodbye.